Security Guide.
A very sore point in my life was Trojan horse. I was physically present when that happened. We call it the Battle of Belgravia because that thing was like for months and months. Every day we'd get up in the morning, go to Thornton Road and Belgravia Road and go burn tires and go, burn trucks and just because the ANC made a call. Oliver Tambo on the Radio Freedom said the youth must make this country ungovernable. And we responded to that. I was still youth at the time. And the country responded to that. So in 1985, for most of that year, we were making this country ungovernable. And the Battle of Belgravia was part of that strategy to make this country ungovernable. So our last military operation was Manenberg Police Station. Right? So we hit Manenberg Police Station with hand grenades.
Welcome to the Security Guide podcast, where safety meets strategy. I'm your host, Faizel Moosa, and each week we dive deep into security matters. Whether you running a company, managing a team, or just passionate about keeping people safe. Today, I have a special guest in the house, Faizel Moosa. Faizel, welcome to the show.
No, thank you, Rafi, for having me. I'm excited to be on your show.
Yes, no, that's good, man. So, Faizel, tell the audience a little bit about yourself, growing up, and how did you get into security and politics, and a little bit about your lifestyle.
Yeah. Well, I was born in District 6,
District 6.
many years ago.
Okay.
But didn't stay there for long. I cannot remember anything about. I was just born there, and then we were
So you-
moved to Lansdowne.
So you were part of that whole
Yeah,
When
eviction
the
and
evictions.
the Group Areas Act.
So you-
My dad was evicted out of District 6,
interesting.
and therefore we still got a land claim there as the
Wow.
family.
Okay, so you're still part of that.
Yeah. Unfortunately, you couldn't go back to District 6 in his lifetime. I mean, that's how long this thing
Sure.
is taking for justice to be restored. So, my dad was a very active person from a young age. In the District 6, in all kinds of organizations and civics and movements,
Mm-hmm.
and he was a lawyer. And so obviously he kind of gravitated towards politics in a sense, and that rubbed off on us as children. We grew up in a highly politicized home. I mean, I was probably about 6 or 7. Then in Muizenberg they used to have that the waterfront there, but it was for whites only. Back,
Okay.
I'm not talking.
So
When
you
I
were
was 7 years
You
old,
were born in what year?
1963.
And then, and how many siblings are you guys?
Well, we're 9 altogether.
Okay, and
Right.
you were the number.
I was the second youngest.
You were the second youngest, so
Yeah.
you had a lot.
A lot of elder
Elder
brothers,
brothers. Okay.
but they were from a different father. Just
Okay.
myself and my younger brother was from
Okay.
my father, but we
Okay.
all grew up in the same house. We were not allowed to be step brothers and step sisters,
Okay.
And my dad, the kind of person he was, he raised all of us equally.
Okay.
So
So you had. So you already. Was you already a judge back then, or
no. He qualified as a lawyer in 1962, just a year before I was born.
And this was all in District 6.
All in District 6, yeah. There's office there and all of that.
Okay, so that's when obviously, like, when if something like that happens to you, as where you actually get evicted from your house, that would obviously make you upset about the system and about the injustice that happened. So fair enough. So take us a little bit. How did that go? How did that go down?
So of course, I mean, he had his first office as an attorney in District 6. And that building strangely still stands today on the 6th floor. And in those days there were no lifts, so it was quite a climb up. I remember as a young boy, my mother taking us into his office before he was evicted eventually out of that office.
Okay.
So he was active in the District 6 civic associations and things like that, and also obviously trying to not to be evicted. I mean, But at the end of the day, all our people, as you know, were evicted out of out of District 6. And the only place he could practice was in Highlands because it was then the only Indian area declared under the apartheid government.
So at a young age, you obviously at 7 years old, did you know about apartheid, or was it just something at later when you've kind of figured out what's
No.
South Africa?
So we were. Our upbringing was very political, and let me just give you the story about Muizenberg. It's so I had a sister that was light of complexion. So Muizenberg being a whites only waterfront, they had this little boat, the water boats drive in circles. So she would go buy the tickets, and then all of us would run through the gate and jump on the boat. And then the guy would say, "Oh, but you're not white, you see." Then he'd chase us with his boat around until we jumped up and ran away. Now, this is what my father used to do to us. He said, "You go buy the tickets, and then the rest of you just go." I mean, we were traveling a lot. Those days with a car, you drive to Joburg. We had family there, we had family in Durban. And, those days the garages were few and far between. You had to carry 2 cans of petrol in your boot to reach the next filling station on the way to Joburg. Wow. But when you get to the garages, the garages had a whites-only entrance and the whites-only toilet. And the non-whites had to go to the back and into the same shop but around the back. So you would make sure that we go through the front as kids. So there's nothing they can do to us. We're children, but they'll chase us around, you see. And that obviously raised the consciousness within us. My experience on buses back then, I mean, my mother and I would have to climb up, the old bus with a back door. We had to go climb up the stairs and sit on top. The bottom of the buses were for whites only. We used to travel often with the train, metro rail, where we would sit at the back and the whites would sit in front. And our carriages were packed to the brim. And then there's 3 or 4 whites sitting in their carriage. So that's where my personal experience comes in with regard to apartheid. And of course,
So like, I mean, I'm just thinking now, like for us, it's like mind-boggling to actually think that, that your race is, you have to be a second-class citizen, because we haven't experienced that. But I mean, growing up, what sort of like on the table, what's the sort of discussion feeling that that we're living in apartheid society, and how do you navigate through that as a child? How does a father speak to a child and basically try to get self-esteem that, what they thinking of us doesn't mean that they think of us second-class citizens, that we are second-class citizens. How is that sort of conversation happening?
So that's the conversation at the table, when you're having dinner. So we had a rule in the house at certain time, everybody must be at the table. You can't come at later on and think you're going to get food if you're not sitting down by the table. And that's where we were always able to converse with to me, my father was probably the most, he had the most impact in my political understanding. So he would clarify a lot of the questions that we would as young, why can't I get on the bus? Or why are you sending us around why is there different doors for different colors? And so we from a young age understood that black people are being discriminated against.
But in that moment and in that period, was his belief and his spirit always believe that there's going to be a better South Africa? Or did he?
No, absolutely. So I knew from a young age who Nelson Mandela was, for instance. I mean, when I went to high school, people were only then finding out, but there's a Nelson Mandela. I knew from primary school already who Nelson Mandela was, because my father was always ANC aligned through all his life.
So your people's
most
spirit
of his
was
life.
never broken?
No. I mean, the older I got, the more involved I got, to a point that I went into the military wing of the African National Congress, recruited into it, trained into it, and had I partook in some military activities within the country. In fact, within Cape Town.
Okay. So what year was that you obviously transitioned from getting more involved in because apparently you worked at your dad's law firm for a bit, and then you transitioned into the political party. So how did that happen?
So let me just go back. So I was at Abibia Primary School.
Abibia.
1976, I was the Standard 5 pupil there. And all the schools were out on boycott, and then we also went out on boycott as a primary school.
I also went to Abibia. I finished in 1995, I think 1996, somewhere around there. I finished.
When did I finish? In 76.
Yeah, 76.
That was my Standard 5 year there.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So we were out, and most of the kids, they didn't know why they were boycotting classes. All right? Because they asked us to write our grievances. Mr. Ali was the principal then.
Okay.
And so my first line that I wrote as one of my is equal rights for all, man.
Sure.
And most of those other kids didn't know why they were out boycotting. Then I went to high school, of course, I went to Sinton. And Sinton was also highly politicized. Nabil Swats come from there. Desai was, part of the leadership there. And I just grew into more and more political activities.
Okay.
I was the school representative on the committee of 81. That was the school boycotts of the 1979, 1980.
So your primary school was Abibia.
Yeah.
And then what high school did you attend?
I then attended Alexander Sinton
Okay.
High School.
Okay, so take us a little bit. What happened, transpired there?
So as you know, Sharpville is 1976, and the whole country was burning. And we as primary school kids went out and boycotted class. And most of us didn't really know why we boycotting class, but because the whole country was boycotting schools, and the Standard 5s alone, went to go and boycott classes. And of course, I then moved on to high school where, political activities continued and so forth. And then I was the school representative on the committee of 81, which was 81 schools across the Western Cape. And that's where I would brush shoulders with Ibrahim Rasool, who was then at universities and Cape Town.
So he was much older than you,
Not much. I was in matric then, right?
Okay.
And they were on university. So I'd say about 3 or 4 years older than what I am.
So take us back to the day that the Sharpville massacre happened, and how did it transpire, and a little bit certain details for the audience.
Yeah, that happened in Sharpville in Joburg. And the police opened fire, killing 63.
Live rounds.
Yeah, live. Killing 63. People came to burn their passes. Black people had to carry their dome pass.
The dome pass, yes.
Yeah, and then there was in fact, the PAC actually motivated that we go on that specific day and go burn all our dome passes in front of the police station.
What year was that in?
76.
76.
Right? I was still young. But that was a critical year, a turning point.
When you said enough is enough.
Yeah, it really exposed the apartheid government for their brutality. It was a massacre. 63 people shot just in a few minutes with live rounds, and they came peacefully. They came to burn a piece of paper.
And they just opened up.
And then they just opened up, yeah. And of course, that was the result of that was the flare up across the country.
Okay.
School boycotts, riots. It just took the country to the brink of civil war. And then, of course, the system reacted very harshly with state of emergencies, and then people were arrested. Many thousands.
And in your
people.
personal experience, so where were you, or what sort of activities were you?
Well, I was still young. I was at primary school. I was just doing my Standard 5. So we only afterwards began to realize the gravity of that massacre.
Okay, so that opened up a can, and it basically from there just spiraled.
It kept the struggle alive. In fact, it kept people continued then. From 1976, there was always somewhere in the country something was burning towards our freedom that we achieved in 1994.
Okay, so from there, so that was actually the big turning point.
Yeah. Remember, the ANC was banned in 1963. Mandela was sent to Robben Island. The whole ANC leadership was on Robben Island. Oliver Tambo had to leave the country. The ANC had to re-establish itself in exile. So there was that from 1963 to 1976, there was a lull, right, in political activities because they had effectively removed the leadership.
The leadership, yes.
And they had locked up so many people that people were too afraid to become active again. But of course, people like Winnie Mandela kept the flame, kept the yearning for freedom, and kept the Mandela name alive. And she was our inspiration as young people that, we must continue the fight. And then in 76, things just flared up after the massacre.
Okay. Then take us from there when you went to the 1990, where you were actually now more older and you were more active in the political environment. How did that look? And
so after leaving high school, I went to work in Joburg for 2 years, and then came back just before the launch of the UDF in 1983. And of course, the UDF was started out of my dad's office with Alan Busak and the other political leaders, Trevor Manuel and Cheryl Carolus, them. And automatically I became involved. I was also working in his office at the time.
Yes, you said the law firm.
The law firm. And then I just got involved again. I was also very much part of the organizing within the UDF. And I was the one that would take the risk of taking the pamphlets to Worcester and, outside of the Cape.
Okay.
Knowing that if you get caught with those pamphlets of the UDF, you could easily be detained or arrested and stuff. But that was my role that I used to play.
So how did you guys keep in contact with like Winnie, and like how did you guys mobilize from different parts of the country?
It was difficult. I mean, so fortunately again for me, when Winnie went to visit Nelson on Robben Island, my dad's office would make that arrangements.
Okay.
And then my mom would collect Winnie at the airport, bring her home, have lunch, and then take her to the ferry. And that's how we would remain. Remember, this is now before cell phones and all of this.
Yes, obviously.
It was the bush telegraph, that was working, and it was largely physical meetings. I mean, when we meet, we would drive all the way to Bloemfontein, for instance, and there would be a secret meeting happening in Bloemfontein or in Gauteng, or
Wow.
and that's how messages and stuff used to come. Of course, we used to get coded messages from Robben Island. To my dad got a very personal letter from Nelson Mandela from Robben Island, just encouraging to continue the good work that he's been doing.
Yeah.
And that's how messages and cryptic messages would come out and give direction politically.
Okay.
So I then get recruited into MK in 1984.
In 1984?
1984.
Okay. The
military wing of the African National Congress.
So who approached you? And
well, Johnny Issel was the one that came and recruited me, because we were a group of activists. My brothers and a few other guys, we were like a unit of activists.
Was that all Cape Townian guys? Or
all Cape Town, all brothers, all locals from Cape Town.
Okay. So they basically came and they told you we're starting a MK.
No. So they said we want you to be. They recruited me into MK. Remember, MK was started in 1962. or 1961 by Nelson Mandela already.
Okay, that was the military wing
That's a military wing, yeah,
of ANC.
of the ANC. And I was then recruited into what they call the underground, but of MK, right?
And what was sort of your duties from the first couple of months? What was your things that you had to do? Or?
Well, so the first thing, they gave me a map, and we went to go. We went to go dig out the cache of arms in Sharpville, Punt Street.
And the arms belonged to who?
To the ANC, to the MK.
Okay, so so you had to dig out.
I had to go dig it out. We had to go dig it out. We didn't know how to use an AK at that time, so we had some of those guys come and show us in my garage. This is how you disassemble. This is how you put it together. This is how you operate an AK.
And the apartheid regime, they never knew that you guys used to work undercover. They never caught you guys.
Well,
and
in 1985, so our last military operation was Manenberg Police Station, right? So we hit Manenberg Police Station with hand grenades.
Okay.
And unfortunately, one of our guys in the group must have been spilling the beans. And then they came for us. But fortunately, we had already left the country to go to Zimbabwe. So in 1985, I left for Zimbabwe, came back in
1985, but wasn't 1985? Yeah,
85, yeah.
85. Okay,
So 84, I was recruited. We did a couple of military operations within South Africa. The last one is November 85, Manenberg Police Station. Then the police, the security branch and the police came to. So we had already arranged this previously amongst ourselves. If one of us gets raided, the rest must just disappear. So one of us got arrested the day after the Manenberg offensive, and then we all just disappeared. I went to Durban for 3 months, and from Durban we regrouped. The whole group regrouped in Joburg, and then we were taken across.
So was that your last event that you guys did as the MK?
As the unit?
As a unit, yes.
Yeah, that was not a well. So 1994, I was asked to reconstitute my unit, right? Because the imminent release of Nelson Mandela, and that unit then from 1990 to 94, we continued to be active, but on a protective basis. We weren't attacking anymore because there was negotiations going on from 1990. So our responsibility was to protect the leadership.
So that time there was no arrests being made by the...
So I wasn't arrested after 1990,
but
till 94.
Just explain.
Between 1985 and 1990, I was in and out.
So when you're getting arrested, how does it look? You just go to behind the cells, and how do you get this?
No, they come to your house, flying over the roofs, kicking your door down, searching for hand grenades and ammunition and all that. And then they take you away.
And then they put you in the holding cell, and then just from there, then
they put you in a cell. Nobody knows where you are. You don't know where you are. They take you, and your family doesn't know where you are.
So no attorney, no.
It was detention without trial.
Without trial.
Without trial. So there wasn't this thing about you must take you for 48 hours. You need to appear before magistrate and all that. None of that. That was the apartheid draconian laws. You see.
Then how would you get released from such a oppressive regime?
Outside people would then start mobilizing, and there would be marches and released. So they had the release committee. So it was kind of structured, where anybody that gets arrested, name goes into and then there's lawyers behind the scene. My dad and he had a whole team of lawyers. Then trying to find out where they are, applying to court to have them released, to give them visiting rights and all of that kind of thing. Also, a very sore point in my life was Trojan horse, right?
Trojan horse.
Yeah, Trojan horse. I was physically present when that happened.
Okay, so take us through the
So it was we call it the Battle of Belgravia, because that thing was like for months and months. Every day we'd get up in the morning, go to Thornton Road and Belgravia Road and go burn tires and go, burn trucks and just because the ANC made a call. Oliver Tambo on the Radio Freedom said the youth must make this country ungovernable. And we responded to that. I was still youth at the time. And the country responded to that. So in 1985, for most of that year, we were making this country ungovernable. And the Battle of Belgravia was part of that strategy to make this country ungovernable.
And it worked.
Yeah, it worked. I mean, they became so desperate that they massacred Sean Mahmoud and others on that specific day when they came hidden in a truck, knowing that we were going to stone the truck because it was a council truck. Anything that represented the state was a target, right? Because we were fighting the state. And there's still a clip that one of these journalists took, and I'm on the clip there, where the guy stands, we're sitting against a wall, about 10 of us, and the policeman stands with his gun holding us down there.
Sure. So tell us, what was your role in supporting Nelson Mandela before and after his release in 1994?
Yeah, so, there's always been the Release Mandela campaign. I mean, that has been an international campaign and also in South Africa. And again, I mean, a lot of that work was done through the UDF, the Defiance campaign and the Release Mandela campaign. And when de Klerk made the announcement on the 9th of February in 1990 that the ANC is now unbanned. Remember they had this census before that. White people had to decide, do they want to
keep the banned or unbanned?
Yeah, do they want to get rid of apartheid? Basically, was the census, and the overwhelming number of white people said, yeah, I think it's time now to end apartheid. You see.
Okay.
And the Klerk then had a mandate to make some announcements. So we unbanned all the political parties, the ANC, the PAC, and others. And he announced the release of Nelson Mandela.
That was in 1990.
Few days before his actual release, the 9th of February 1990, he announced. And they wanted to release Mandela in Johannesburg. But the ANC said, no, we want you just to... In fact, Mandela said, just leave me at the gate of Victor Verster. Remember, he was moved from Robben Island to Paulsmoor Prison.
Mm-hmm.
And from Paulsmoor Prison, they moved him to a house at Victor Verster Prison. Mm-hmm. So on the 11th of February, he was released. So there was a reception committee created, again out of my dad's office.
So who was in the committee? What sort of names that you remember?
Yeah, it's like Trevor Manuel. Sure, there was many of them. Cheryl Carolus.
Just a few names.
Who else was there? Was
any current politicians that was in that committee?
Yeah, Cyril Ramaphosa was part of that committee. There was many of them.
Okay, and then and your role in there, you were...
Well, I was part of the structures. I mean, we were part of the UDF structure, so of course... Okay. And of course, the MK was present, and we were then instructed by Norman Yangeni, who is the brother of Tony Yangeni. Mm-hmm. You should remember Tony Yangeni.
Yes, Tony Yangeni, yes.
Who was also part of MK, to put together a VIP protection detail. Not really knowing much about VIP protection, but we because of our MK activities, we had done quite a bit in terms of security, right? Like we used to look after Alan Busak and after Trevor Manuel and after the leadership of the UDF through those years when they went to march to Guguletu or march to town and Desmond Tutu and those people. So we had a kind of a experience that we played during the struggle days.
So how many days was this before Mandela?
3 days. We
3
were
days.
informed 3 days before.
Wow, so you must have been excited.
Yeah,
and
it was
shocked.
shocked. I mean, we were completely taken.
And your dad, what was the conversation?
No, it was hectic. I mean, we didn't see him for the 3 days because then it was now we need to mobilize and now we need to organize and make sure Nelson Mandela gets a hero's welcome. So for 3 days, we practically didn't see him because the organizing committee.
Did you guys have uniform? Did you have
No. So it was a clandestine operation, completely undercover. We didn't trust the system at the time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we didn't. There was the reason why we looked at security was there was rumors that they were going to assassinate Nelson Mandela on that day. Remember, there was the avia threats, right, happening at the same time. So we put together a clandestine VIP protection detail. I remember myself walking around with a long jacket and an AK under my jacket.
Okay.
At the parade in town, where Mandela then made his first speech from. We received him at the gates of Victor Verster.
Wow.
But it was chaos. We lost the car somewhere on the road, you know, the green Cressida that was, we're still looking for the car. And we then had to regroup at the parade in town.
So when Nelson Mandela was actually walking out of and when he was walking with Winnie, where were you actually standing at that time? You remember that famous walk?
Yeah.
And then he lifted up his hand.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. No, I was outside of the gate. Okay. Remember, you walked from just inside the gate
and then
through, and then he came out and then got into the car.
He got into the car,
so
yes.
we were practically around the car area.
Okay, so and then once...
Because we weren't... I mean, I couldn't go in with my AK into the prison. I mean, there was some security measures. And we didn't want to risk it either. So.
Did you see anything strange happening? Any threats that you guys...
No. It was just too chaotic. I mean, even if anything had to happen, there's very little we could have done because it was chaos. From there all the way down to town. People were standing on bridges along the N2, you know, waiting for Mandela to come past. And getting onto the parade, just trying to get into the city hall was a struggle, was a battle just to get through people. And there was no security. I mean,
so it was just you and...
Just me and the undercover team, yeah, that was around just to try and do whatever we could do for that day.
Okay.
And then after that, the ANC then realized, hey, we must seriously start looking at our
security
leadership. Yeah.
And leadership.
I was then called by Norman Yengeni again and said, please bring your team in so that we can start providing proper, a certain level of security.
So that's where the whole idea of yourself and the idea of security came to you.
But at the time, I wasn't still, even then, I still wasn't considering being in the security industry
yet.
Yeah.
So it was still your journey of being a CPO for MK and the party.
Yeah, I mean it was still just our commitment to the struggle.
Okay.
Basically.
Because you guys never had trust, like if this thing is real or something.
No, we didn't know where the negotiations was going to end up. Remember, just the release of Nelson Mandela. We haven't even been through Codesa 1 or Codesa 2. This was still very early days. Just the release, that was to us already a major achievement. Yes. We knew that freedom was going to be coming. We didn't think it was going to take another 4 years. We thought, well, since he's released, and everybody knew that he's been talking to them even while he was in prison, and you know, with the intelligence, Barnard.
Okay. So after the release, and you were there on the day, then when was your next encounter with Nelson Mandela?
Well, so he stayed in Cape Town for 2 days, and then he flew to Gauteng, right? And then he addressed the people at FNB Stadium.
Yes.
So we weren't part of that. But a few months later, he came back into the Western Cape.
Okay.
And our responsibility now became broader than just Nelson Mandela. it became the other leaders of Tambo,
So all of them, they used to come.
all of them, whenever they're in the Western Cape, this unit of ours would be responsible for their security.
Okay. And where was the central, like the meeting point for your unit? Where was your people's headquarters at the time?
It was in the initial stage of it at my house.
Okay. So, but
And the ANC didn't really have any infrastructure in South Africa. They didn't have offices here yet.
so your dad, Judge Moosa, was the one that was helping this whole thing.
Yeah. I mean, his house. I mean, everything was done out of his house, basically in the very early
Very early
stages.
stages.
People like Meryl Raji used to give us.
Wow. So your dad has a big part to play in the struggle and actually helping.
No.
the-
I mean,
and-
my dad's history is a history on its own. I mean, he represented all of them. Trevor Manuel, Cheryl Carolus, all the big names. Alan Busak, Desmond Tutu. Whenever there was a legal issue, he was the guy they'd call. And so many other thousands of political prisoners and detainees that he represented. Right up, he used to drive up to the R or Neisner or the Riversdal and Friedenberg and all these places to go and consult
So he also
in prisons.
plays a part in the security side of the delegates.
Well, not really. I mean, that
But I'm saying helping with resources.
Yeah, no, of
Yes,
course.
I'm
I mean,
saying
he
that's-
availed his office was always available. We used to meet in his office in Athlone. We used to meet at my house, at his house, when we had to plan when Tim Nelson is coming again in a few weeks' time. He's coming for 5 days. So we didn't do the whole planning, go do the advance work, get his schedule. And his schedule was very fluid. I mean, you might think you're going in a certain direction, then it changes because some president wants to see him or something.
So Faisal, the detail of your security that you were doing, seeing that the Security Office Board started in 1987, did it have any impact on you guys?
Not at all. We didn't even know there was such a thing.
Is it?
We just knew we had to protect our leaders. There's a threat on the leadership,
Okay.
and we had to secure them.
Okay.
So we had no clue that there was a security. I only became aware of the Security Officers Board, to be honest with you, in 1994 when I
1994.
registered my company.
Okay. So the detail that you used to have every time when Mandela or any of the delegates used to come, you guys used to formulate it yourself and take us through.
So
some of the-
I'll get a message through our commander, which was Norman Yengeni, to say Chris Hani is coming,
Mhm.
right? And this is his itinerary, and then we would develop everything around it. We used to get our cars from Meryl Raji, from Merway Motors.
Was there any bulletproof vehicles back
No,
then?
no, it was ordinary vehicles.
Ordinary vehicles?
Yeah, but we used to borrow cars because we had the lead car, the main car, the backup car, and a Scout.
And what sort of firearms did you guys have?
We had our AKs.
AKs?
And
Classic?
We had our AKs, and we had some friends of ours borrowed us the firearms and 9mm. We had some Makarovs,
Okay.
and of course some shotguns.
Okay, so you guys were well armed when you guys...
armed, yeah. We had enough. We had enough
Enough
arms.
firepower. But was there any incidents on any of these details?
Not at all, except out in I think it was Boipatong, when there was also a massacre happening there. And then Cyril went, but we weren't part of that detail. That provincial detail then took care of, but then he was shot at when he came there. Yeah,
Okay, but that was in a separate province.
yeah, it was in another province.
So basically, after Mandela was released, there was no sort of uprising. It was quite...
No. So Chris Hani got killed. Remember, Chris Hani got assassinated in 1992.
Yes, 1992.
And that took the country to the brink of civil war. And
Was
it
that
was
in Western Cape?
No, he was shot in Joburg,
In Joburg, yes.
Gauteng.
Gauteng.
And if it wasn't for Mandela having to make the statement that people must be calm, this country would have gone over the edge.
But the guy that shot Chris Hani is in prison at the moment.
No, he's been released. He was
released.
sent back to Poland.
He's sent back to Poland.
Yeah, Walus. The other one died already.
The other one died,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, that was an interesting time of our political career. So
It was touch and go, I must tell
was-
you. Ani's assassination was
it could have
it was the
sparked civil
nearest
law
we ever came
to a civil law
to a civil war. That forced also the government, the apartheid government,
to force an election.
to force the election, to give us a date, because Mandela said, "Give me the date. Whatever happens, we must tell the people that is going to be the date of the election."
Because in that 4-year period, I mean, it was still de Klerk that was still leading,
Yeah,
but he was slowly losing power. Everybody could see he had to have a formal democratic election.
well, I think they were losing power long before 1990. I mean, the ANC had a very effective isolation program. You know, this divestment out of South Africa, and the government was really with its back against the wall.
I mean, the international community
Had isolated South
Isolated
Africa.
with
Trade was being shut
and
down.
the sports. I remember
That's right.
we only got into, I think, the World Cup. I think was 1992, 1993.
Yeah, we were isolated. I mean, Sakos is no normal sport in the abnormal society. Was the sporting fraternity playing its role in isolating South Africa?
So all that put pressure on the
And the
government.
government, yeah. It was not sustainable anymore.
So they knew already.
They had their backs against the wall. They had to go and talk. And they were under pressure from Stellenbosch. The National Party government was under pressure. You better go talk to these people, because they had already, the capitalists had already met with the ANC in 1987 in Lusaka to try and see, is there an appetite for a negotiated settlement.
Okay. So basically, from there you moved on after Chris Hani, and then was there any other times that Mandela came?
No, many times. So in that 4 years, he was in and out of Cape Town fairly regularly. Zuma was in and out of Cape Town.
And how was his spirit when the people used to speak to him? And
Yeah, he was an amazing person just to be in his presence, And he had such a good memory for an old man. I mean, he used to get up at 4 o'clock every morning. It's probably the trunk habit that you can't get rid of.
Yes.
After spending
Yes.
27 years,
Yes.
4 o'clock is 4 o'clock
4
in the
o'clock.
morning.
So he still had that habit.
He still had that habit. Then he wants to go walk. The detail must be with him to walk, and then he'll take us to the waterfront where the boat used to leave, the Susan Kruger. The boat that used to take them to Robben Island. He'll talk to us about, he got on the boat and, give us a bit of his. And he'll remember me, like, how's your dad? And,
Very approachable
very
person.
approachable and speak to you directly.
Mhm.
Whereas Thabo was different. Thabo you don't talk to.
Is it?
You just do your job.
Do your job, okay.
He sits there, he doesn't talk to you. But Mandela was very approachable. I mean,
You wanted to get to know who was the person behind.
that's right, yeah.
Okay.
And he remembered. I mean, he remembered like my dad, and remembered people that was with. He'll remember your name and things like that, man. It
So you
made
had
it
a
a
lot of-
very different, kind of relationship.
So he had like an energy when you used to
Yeah.
be around him.
Oh, that man had energy. I mean, he'll get up at 4 o'clock or take his walk and then work till the night 2 o'clock and be up at 4 o'clock.
Okay.
Amazing. I mean, we couldn't manage. I was a young man at the time.
So you always had a good spirit about him.
Always positive.
Is it?
Always
So
positive.
and he was always, and how was he with the ordinary guy, the layman in the street?
That was our problem with him, because you can't just walk with him in the street. If somebody wants to take his hand, he's my walks. And when it's kids, it's even worse, because he wants to go play and lift and pick and kiss all the children he sees. Now, prior to the elections of 94, we took him all over. I mean, I flew with him to Beaufort West, Kailicha. We did lots of rallies. And he would go into the crowd and want to go and kiss a little girl, man. And there's thousands of people. Now, as a security, that's your worst
Yes.
nightmare,
How to,
right? How do you
how to
keep the
separate everybody?
yeah, and people didn't want. They wanted just to be in the presence or touch this great person, man. It's not that they wanted to harm him, right? But the crowd, I mean, how do you control 50,000 people wanting just to touch one person?
Yeah. But I think did he know at the time that he left such a big impact, that he was such a global phenomenon, or he just like carrying on and
You know,
just
it's a
did it all?
difficult question, because I mean, I think he did realize his acceptance of his stature, right? Because he used it. I mean, when Chris Hani was killed, he really went for the clerk and saying, "You guys now better decide, otherwise this country is going to go
So using
further down."
his influence to
Yeah, you would. I mean, let me give you an example. So we fly to Beaufort West, little aircraft. We land in the sand. There, got stuck in the sand. You see some security guys get out, push the push the airplane.
oh my word, yeah.
So when we arrived, the whole street of Beaufort West, the main road going through, if you've driven that road, that was lined up with Eastergaarde. It was that AVB guys dressed in black.
Okay.
They were determined that we are not going to have an ANC rally in Beaufort West.
Okay.
Beaufort West is buzzing, people coming from all other towns, full of comrades. Mandela's,
What year was this in?
84.
84.
Just prior to the elections.
Before the elections.
It was now election campaign.
Time. Okay, so this is the first time they're going around doing campaigns.
Yeah, we're in the campaign mode now. So we explained to Mandela, these guys are saying we're not going to have a rally. Mandela saying, no, it's our country. We're going to go ahead with this rally. But call the leader of that group in, man. So we call the leader. Leader comes. The boer. Harde gat the boer. I don't know what Mandela told him inside there. But when he came out, the man was completely demoralized.
Is it?
And he walked out there with his tail between his legs, and he immediately withdrew all those troops that they had there on the road that was preventing us from having a rally. So he did have that ability.
He had that ability to
even against a guy like Javier guy that believed that this is a black man, he's inferior.
Yeah, that way of speaking to him.
And then if you remember, he was the only person that could address the Queen of England.
Yes.
As Margaret, right? Everybody had to use the protocol.
Yes. Yeah, that
so
is.
I think he understood his power, right? And he could use it and manipulate. I mean, he was good at that, I must tell you. I mean, there were times like the suspension of the armed struggle, the suspension of MK, the military wing. We were absolutely against it, completely. Because we felt that the state is still got all its machinery in place. How can the ANC decide to disband MK? It's the wrong strategic move.
And then?
But he convinced us all. No, it's the right thing to do.
Is it?
He told us, I'm telling you today, go throw your AKs into the sea. We're going to negotiate our way through this.
Okay.
Because remember, we come out of the armed struggle. We were taught we were going to take this country over to the barrel of an AK-47. We were not going to negotiate. And he came and convinced us all.
And that's how the transition happened.
That's how we then
buried
our AKs.
And that's when the election, just prior to the election.
Well, that was around about 91, 92.
91, 92. And then slowly...
Because then they went into the official negotiations and Kodesa 1 and Kodesa 2.
And then
Chris Hani got shot. And because there was an impasse at the time. We didn't agree. So there was a breakdown of negotiations. And Chris Hani's death forced the parties, both sides, back to the table.
Okay. So then now that's now from the struggle from 1994. So then how did you from then transition into the security side of the business?
So at the end of
1994, yes.
Yeah, not the end of 94, at the end, just before the elections. We were working very closely. The protection unit of the ANC was working very closely with the protection unit of the state. because they had now realized after Chris Hani's death, they must also play a role in securing and making sure that the Mandelas and the Thabo Mbekis gets to the election. They couldn't afford another assassination,
yes.
right? So we worked very closely with them. So the intention was to integrate the ANC's VIP unit with SAPS
Okay.
post-elections. And that's when after 94, I just worked a few months still with Cyril.
This is after the elections now, because then he
Yeah,
obviously
then he was in office.
union buildings and he had to obviously move back.
He had an office in Parliament here because he was given the responsibility of writing the new constitution. Right?
Okay.
He was the chair of what they call the Constituent Assembly. It was all the political parties together, and they had to write this new constitution that we have today. So I worked with him. So from 1990 to 94, I used to work with Cyril also. Because Mandela would come and then Cyril wouldn't be here, and then Cyril would come, Mandela would not be here. So we were full-time volunteers for that 4 years within the ANC. Whoever was in the Western Cape from the leadership would be protected by us. And we, of course, expanded the protection detail, because there were times when 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 different leaders was in Cape Town on different missions, doing different things.
Okay. So after the election, when Mandela was obviously now voted in, then what happened to your unit, and then how did that
most of them got integrated into the SAPS.
Into SAPS?
Yeah, into the SAPS protection services. Right.
And yourself?
I then decided not to go for I didn't trust them.
Okay, so
I still didn't trust we were enemies, arch enemies. Now you're working with these people.
So
it was already difficult.
It was already difficult. So
yeah.
You decided you're rather going to go in different path.
So fortunately, I got some very good training while I was with the ANC. I was sent to the States to do a close protection course. And the Americans are paranoid about security. So I had a very good training experience there. I mean, they literally took you onto the racetrack and rolled you in cars.
Advanced driving.
All of that,
Okay.
Firearms.
Tactical.
And then the ANC also sent us on other courses, right? Security courses.
Okay, so they were grooming you as you were getting that security background now.
So the intention was for us to integrate into SAPS. I was told that I would integrate as a major into the protection service. I said, no, I'm not going to go.
So then take us, how did you transition? Now, obviously, as we know, you founded Quattro Security. So first of all, how did you find out about that you can open up your own security company, the SOB, a little bit about that?
So I then I've got nothing to do. These leaders now all become government officials, so the state takes care of them. I'm sitting at home, I don't know what to do. I then decided, no, maybe the security industry. And initially it was, I've got the VIP protection experience. I can use Cyril and Mandela as my references. And so naturally I went and I formed a company called Sichaba. That was the first company.
Your first company?
That was in September 1994.
1994?
Yeah.
Okay.
I managed to get a little office for free for 6 months in Athlone. I went to fetch my mother's garden furniture, the plastic white furniture.
Yeah.
Put it there in the office. My dad gave me an old filing cabinet there. I put it there. At the time, you could apply for a phone without having money. You just make the application and they would come put it in, and you get the bill 3 months later. So slow the system was at the time.
And how was it applying through the SOB that time?
So I didn't know the SOB existed.
Okay.
Even when I was in that office.
Okay.
And we started doing marketing and stuff. And then one day I just got a call from some white guy saying, listen, I hear you're running a security company. We didn't have contracts yet, but I did flyers and pamphlets and stuff. And
still works today, though.
Yeah. So security officer board, no, I don't know. Come see me. So he came, and we had a good conversation. He was very willing, and he helped us through the application. At the time, it was very simple. It wasn't like it's today. I mean, today it's like a nightmare.
Sure, yeah.
They make the barriers of entry more difficult. So he assisted us quite well. I think we were probably the second black-owned security company in the Western Cape.
Okay.
The first one was All Guard, which was owned by Dullah Sayed.
Okay. He was the first.
That was the first. So we
Okay,
were
so
the
you're the
second.
second.
So
Okay.
and it was just post 94, and the whites were very eager to assist and all of that.
Nice.
So it was a good experience. I mean, we didn't have much difficulty. We got accredited for the company.
And then your actual guard, what sort of training did they have to go through? Like if you had to employ people, is it just you teach them on the job training?
Well, the first guard in the company for Sichaba was me.
Okay, so you so you had all the credentials of Nelson Mandela.
Yeah. I didn't have any formal SOB training.
But
I didn't know you needed it, right?
yes, but your CV,
I
your
said no. I was
credentials.
trained in the States, man.
Exactly.
Right. So the guy that gave me the office in Athlone was Ibrahim Borat, and he had quite a number of buildings in Athlone.
Is that the Melamed?
Yeah, Melomed guy.
Yes.
And my dad knew him, and he knew me. So I told him, listen, I'm starting the security business, and so he gave me my first site.
So he was your first client.
My first client, yeah.
Nice.
He gave me office for free, and he gave me my first site, and it was a night shift site, and I was the guard on that
Shout
site.
out to the Borats, eh? Doing charity.
Yeah. I mean, he probably doesn't remember, but he gave us that break that we needed.
Nice. You need that.
Yeah, and so I was the first night shift there. In the day, I'll dress up in my suit and my tie and my tachi bag, and get on the train in Athlone and go to town and go knock on doors.
And that's to canvas for work.
Yeah, I'm the managing director of the company. I'm now looking for work.
Wow.
And they don't know in town that I just jumped the train. I didn't have money to buy a ticket. You could still get away those days with it.
Yeah. That's the pure hustle. Respect the hustle.
And into town, and then go and do my day, and then night I must go and stand guard. And I must say, I mean, maybe Borat will hear this, that I did sleep sometimes on the job. But that was my life for a few months until then Adil and I connected, and I brought Adil into the business.
Okay.
Right.
So...
And that was Sichaba.